Good morning.
Morning.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. It is currently 7:30 in the morning, and I've been awake for 3 hours. How about you?
I think same time. I think I woke up around 2:30, I believe.
2:30. What time did you sleep?
I need to ask you, what time did you take a bath yesterday?
Probably like 10.
Yeah, so I slept around 10.
So right after I left the room.
Yeah, so I slept for about 5 hours.
Yeah, I probably slept for like an hour or two because I think by the time I ended up going to bed, it was 11:38. I was pretty surprised when I looked at the time, but yeah, I went to bed around 11:38. I rolled around in bed for an hour, and then I think I got an hour or two of sleep, and then I was rolling around in bed for another hour or two before I finally got up around 4:20, and then I laid it again for 30 minutes, and then 4:50 I finally fully woke up. But yeah, I've been awake ever since.
Yeah, I think that's what jet lag is, I think, all about. I usually don't get jet lag, but this time, yeah, it was a little bad, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I think it's worse when you're traveling eastward because you're going against the clock, what I've heard, because at least when you go westward, you're kind of traveling with the sun. Because when we flew 14 hours west,
Right.
and the time zone, but we flew like, 12, 13 hours west, and the time zone difference between the U.S. and Japan is 14 hours. So it's almost like time kind of went at the exact same rate it was supposed to. But I'm curious what the next week's going to go like now because we kind of went against it, and we slept the full night on the flight, and then we landed here at 6:45, and then we slept again, and we couldn't sleep. So it'll be a rough couple days, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake we did. I think we slept a lot. If you would have slept for about a couple of hours in the beginning of the flight, then staying awake would have helped. I usually don't get jet lag because of managing the time well. I travel a lot, as you know. So I manage the time well in terms of how much long you want to sleep on a plane. Vis-a-vis sleep on the sleep in the hotel once you reach the destination. So yeah.
Yeah, I know you told me that you've found out ways to combat jet lag.
Right.
I think you told me that you tried to match your sleep schedule on the flight with the new time zone you're traveling to.
Right.
So is that the primary thing you do, or like what's the reason why
There are
you
two or
don't?
three things I do, or which I miserably failed this time doing. One, exactly what you mentioned. I think you have to manage the sleep time on the plane. You have to see that if you can sleep at the same time when it is night at the destination and when you're on the plane, if you can match that time and sleep. That's one. Second, when you reach your destination, you have to just discard all other activities. Just go to gym, sweat yourself out. Do HIIT.
So that's the first thing you do?
Right. I just go to the hotel room. I just rush to the gym, do a quick half an hour burst of workout, more like HIIT. You sweat yourself out, then you take a hot shower, and then you go to bed. Usually it works out fine.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. This has been, 10 days of travel? 10 to 12 days of travel?
Yeah, 12, I think, if you include the travel days, 14 days. Yeah.
14 days,
Yeah.
right? 2 weeks, and we have not lifted a single time in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I don't usually try to lift when you travel, at least for work. But yeah, when's the last time you went this long without lifting?
I think this is the only thing I can recall for the longest time ever.
Yeah.
Right? So I think always when I travel, there are few days as I will always slip in to make sure that I work out. But yeah, this time it was a little different.
Yeah, it was hectic. We were busy.
It was
all the
hectic,
time.
and we are in an Airbnb as well, so you don't have any
no
amenities.
hotel
Right?
gym.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's rough. It's out of your way to kind of
Yeah.
find one.
Right. Right.
But yeah, how do you feel about missing the workouts for 2 weeks?
Rough is the word I would say, but I'm raring to go today. I think we both are going today, right?
Yeah,
so
this evening.
in the evening.
We'll
Yeah.
go. I'm gonna hit legs, so better get excited.
So that's a good way to start the day. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So
or rather week, not day.
Yeah, start the week strong. But yeah, what was the best part of the last month of travel?
I think a lot of learnings, right? So I think Japan, I always wanted to visit. I think we as a family wanted to visit. We've been thinking about it for some time now. And finally we did it. And I think it was an experience. The culture was phenomenal. The people are really, really nice. Cold was the same. It's just that you are outside more, so you feel it more. But cold was no different from what we see or experience in the US. But more importantly, the entire setup of Japan, all the different regions we went to, has a charm of its own and a character of its own. I truly enjoyed it. I loved every part of it. How about you?
Yeah, I noticed those cultural pieces as well. I think one shocking thing to me was how old the population was there, and I didn't really realize it until we came back to New Jersey. Literally after I dropped you guys off at the restaurant, and me and Natara went to Chipotle, I was kind of looking around and noticed how much of a larger youth population there is in the U.S. And I started reading about it, and I think 1 in 3 people in Japan are over the age of 65, and we've talked about this already. That partly because they already have a longer life expectancy than most other countries around the world. In addition to that, their birth rate is I think 1.2 per family, which is a replacement you need 2.1. So it's already there. I think at a population of 130 million right now, and it's gonna go down to 100 million. But I think besides that, there was a huge cultural thing I saw in the types of people that were there. Like I don't think I've ever, maybe in Iceland, but besides Iceland, I think I've never felt more safe in a country.
Mm-hmm.
Just walking around anywhere, whether you're in a city or a town, anywhere, it felt extremely safe. We didn't see a single homeless person, which was crazy. And you come back to the U.S. and you realize all the things that are going on over here, just as you drive down I-95, come back home. But yeah, I'm curious when you mention culture and you notice a cultural difference, like what is the main difference that you see in your eyes when you mention that as like the number one thing that you saw?
If I have to say number one, so I think it's more willingness to help others. Every time we have called for help, right, like finding a direction or looking for a place, people have gone out of the way to help us. I will cite 2 examples. Like we were in this restaurant, I believe, in a mall kind of a setup, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, and this guy you asked for, where is the Skytree entrance is, and this person is actually working in a very busy restaurant, which has a long line of people waiting to come inside, and he's trying to do few things. He's taking orders. He's the usherer, making people sit on the seats, and he's also talking to the chef to place the orders as well. So there are 2 or 3 people managing the whole show, and you go up to him and say, "Where is Skytree?" And this guy can't even speak English properly.
Yeah.
And we were using our Google Translate to do our best to communicate what we need to. And he went out of the way. I mean, he left everything there and he just walked up with us to show where the entrance was, which was very different from what he experienced in other countries. And it was time and it's not about this person alone. Time and again, whenever we have asked for help from people, from strangers, they have come out of their way to help, which was something that stood out for me.
I noticed that a lot as well. And I think we already kind of knew that coming in because I think one of your friends mentioned that, was it the taxi driver that...
No, it was my brother's friend. He was in Japan, I believe, last year, and he kind of missed his appointment, or almost about to miss his appointment. He has to take some train somewhere in Tokyo. He has to go somewhere else, and he was not able to figure out. And we know now how, because there are too many lines, JR line, this line, that line, Metropolitan line, and he kind of was stuck and he was not able to figure out where he needs to go. And he asked this random guy on the station, and he was trying to explain, but again, as Japanese people are not very strong in English, and he was not able to communicate better with him, and so he decided to come along. So he literally went all the way to drop him to the place he has to go, and he came back, and stranger, totally out of the street, and no hidden agenda, and he just helped him out of the way. So yeah. So I've learned about that from my brother. So yeah, we experience a similar thing every time we ask for help. People were very willing to help us.
Yeah. In addition to that restaurant example, it happened to me on 2 or 3 other occasions. I think when we were in what was the last town we went to? Akihabara. That's the entire area of Tokyo decorated with anime characters.
Oh yeah.
Akihabara,
the electronic city, right?
Electric City, they call it.
The electric city. Sorry.
Yeah. And we were in that one store, and Mom was buying the face masks, and we were looking for the entrance. So I remember I was talking to mom in English trying to figure out where the entrance was, and some other person who wasn't even a staff member overheard us, and she just came and started talking to us in Japanese, trying to explain to us, and she navigated us to the entrance without us without us asking her for help. And then in the train station, it happened twice. It was fun to try to use the local dialect a little bit. I tried to learn a little bit, just like Egachi wa doku desu ka, where's the entrance, or
Right.
Eki wa doku desu ka, where's the train station, and
Right.
fun to practice it. But yeah, I did notice that a lot. There was definitely it's funny because I think the guy on the plane said people were shy, but I kind of disagree with that. I feel like people were less shy when I noticed that, because it seemed that they were really friendly when you did start talking to them, and they even came out of their own way to come to you when you needed help. So I did notice that more over there. But
I think shy he was using with the reference, if I'm not wrong, he was using with the reference of not extravagant, not showy. I think they are more humble and they're more like confined to their own world rather than showing off, which you typically see in, at least in the US and some parts of India as well. So yeah, I think they were truly humble, and that's what he meant, I believe. The guy we met in the met on the plane, right? So
well, yeah, that makes a lot more sense, because I think over here it's more of a culture to show off. Not that's a good thing or a bad thing, but over there, if you see a fancy car, it's like once in a long time you'll ever see one. Somewhere deep in the highway, you finally see one. And we drove for how many kilometers? Like 2,000 kilometers?
2,000 plus, yeah.
Yeah, long road trip. So I didn't barely see anyone even trying to show off. I think the culture there is a lot more humble.
Right.
But yeah, it was really nice to see that. And then you come back to the U.S. and there's a lot of other stuff going on here, which is interesting to look at. We were talking about a lot on our trip as well, that the homeless, I've never, I feel like, gone to a country and seen not a single homeless person.
I think Iceland was one.
Iceland too. Yeah,
but again, Iceland has less people, right? So
what's the population of Iceland?
If I'm not wrong, they're about 320,000 people.
Wow.
Right, it's a big country. It's the size of, we are in New Jersey right now. They have
like 5 New Jerseys.
5 times the size of New Jersey.
Wow,
yes.
that's crazy.
So it's because of the extreme weather condition there. Right?
Yeah.
And some of the places are not habitable. So that's the reason there is smaller population. But if you look at Japan, they're about 117
million.
Yeah, around that.
I believe 130 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think even in Iceland, there's no major city besides Reykjavik that we stayed in. I think most of the places we stayed, there were houses sporadically, miles apart.
Yeah, there are hardly any people there.
Yeah.
But yeah, compared to that, if you look at Japan, it's a
much more.
It's a first world nation. It's a developed country, and you're right. You don't even see a single homeless person. City was, I mean, not even Tokyo, right? Every place we went to, it was clean. It was really well maintained, well managed. I saw people picking up stuff from the road.
I saw that too.
Yeah, there were random people picking up stuff, and there were no dustbins, as you know, and we read about it. So they believe in a very different culture that do not create things that you cannot dispose of. So there were places where there were dustbins, but you can hardly find any.
Yeah, that's something important to mention. That the reason they don't have trash cans anywhere is because they have a culture that if you have trash in public, then you're supposed to bring that with you. Like, it's more of a impediment toward creating trash than at that point if there's no public trash cans, right? And I remember as soon as we landed on the airport, I already see trash on the ground over there, and it immediately hit me in my mind that I barely even saw trash for the last few weeks, which is crazy to see. Yeah. But I think right now Japan's population is 130 million, but unfortunately with the birth rate decline, I think in the next 25 years they're projected to drop to 100 million.
Yes, yeah. I think it's a global phenomenon. I was reading the book Lifespan, and it was talking about how the global population, not even Japan, I think overall is going to increase, I believe, until 2100 to about 11 billion population.
What are we at right now, 8 billion?
We are about 8 billion and thereabouts. So we'll add 3 billion more in the next, 70 odd years. And then it's going to decline, and there are various reasons for that. One is people not getting married on time, infertility because of microplastic in the environment, which we have spoken about before as well. And overall, when you try to have kids in the latter part of the your life, right, and knowing the environment that we're living in, the kind of food we're eating, The fertility rate is going down. So all of those combined factor, they're seeing the population going to decline after 2100. So it's a very interesting fact. So it's not a Japan problem alone, it's a world problem as well.
Yeah.
I was reading an article about South Korea in Wall Street Journal about 3-4 months back, where it was scary to note that people are buying more, more, what do you call those, the prams.
Prams? Like the embryo birth kind of thing, or
right? No, they are buying more dog-related stuff than kids-related stuff.
Oh, prams.
So
you sent me that article,
right?
Yeah.
So, and I think
dog strollers.
Yeah, dog strollers and prams, and
What's a pram?
It's where I believe you make your dog sleep. If I'm not wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, right. But anyway, so what I was trying to say is that it's already a national crisis in countries like South Korea, where you're nothing wrong in having pets as your own child, but having your own child, the race is going to be, if you do not do anything right now, over a period of time, it might be extinct as well.
That's interesting, because I think a lot of people hear that and they kind of turn a side eye, because they fall into this mindset of the world is already overpopulated, it's not a big deal. But I don't think people realize how fast these kind of exponential effects can happen, that for now it only seems like a small decline, but as it starts to take off with huge losses of population. I think South Korea's birth rate is 0.7 or something per 2 people, which is crazy.
Right.
Even the U.S. is not in great shape either. I think we're just above replacement, or are we below replacement? 1.
I would not know the exact number of U.S., but yeah,
Okay.
I think it's there about right around that corner. Yes.
Yeah, we're at about 2.1, wherever, either up or down.
Right.
So we'll definitely see in the next, as you said, by 2100, it start to decline. And I think it will kind of be a shock, the impacts of that, because right now it seems like, the world's overpopulated and all those narratives. But I think the second we start to see population decline at an exponential rate, it will be a huge detriment to the economy in general, and either workforces, labor forces, and the downstream effects of that could be detrimental to even the continuation of civilizations. I think a lot of civilizations in the past have collapsed because of birth rate decline. So it's interesting to look at, and I wonder, what do you think are the biggest problems with that? What do you think are the biggest repercussions of this phenomena?
Yeah, I think economy is definitely there. But I think my belief is right now there is a common notion across countries in nation that, excuse me, as you grow older, right? So you need to be out of the workforce, right? Typically, there are countries where they are mandated age marks, or their age-related discrimination always happening, right? So you are letting go of people from work, let's say in their late 50s, early 60s, and all, and these people are highly knowledgeable. They have spent a long period of time in appreciating the work industry and doing what they do the best. And you're moving them away so that they can make space for the younger generation to come and take work. So I think the biggest impediment will be that how do you make a mind shift culture of bringing the old workforce back again into work so the economy can thrive when the population declines, right? Because see, it's a phenomenon you're creating, and people now want to retire. Obviously, I have a different point of view on that there's nothing wrong with retirement in my point of view, right? But yeah, in general concept, right? People are either pushed away from work or generally retiring, either by the country's rules and regulation or by the notion of how we have formed a corporate world. And the new generation, first of all, there is a big difference between how they're learning and what they're learning and what they bring to the work culture. On top of it, you have AI and everything going into play. So imagine a world which is declining in population and your workforce which is not there to cater to all the needs. So it will be an interesting phenomenon. I think that would be, in my opinion, will be a greatest shock for the culture as well.
That'll be interesting. Yeah, I think going back to your retirement point, I just think that retirement is like this myth of the day we can finally do what you want.
Yeah.
And I think people justify a life they don't like in the name of retirement, but I guess the alternative life perspective is that if today is the day you're doing exactly what you want, then what's the point of retirement if you're already enjoying?
Right. And it's also the weekend phenomena, right? I mean, at a micro level. People work, we say, I'll work for 5 days and then I'll party during the 2 days. Nothing wrong in it. But
Yeah.
my point is that when you have that kind of mindset, that means you are saying what you're doing, you're not enjoying, right?
Right.
So you are dragging yourself to whatever you're doing. It could be anything, right? Working for yourself, for a company, or cutting hair, whatever, your profession is. I think if you do not enjoy it, my opinion is not do it, right? Find something that you enjoy, because we may not like it, but most of our time goes in the work that you do, right? For example, if you're working in an office, more time you spend in office than at home. And how bad it is if you do not like that. That means most of your time you're in a miserable condition.
I agree. And I don't think that means you need to have some magical career.
Yeah.
You don't have to become like some music artist, or just because you love the guitar, you become part of a band. I mean, those could be nice as hobbies, but I guess it's also about learning and cultivating jobs you already have and learning how to appreciate them. Because I think you can rewire your brain to enjoy those activities, and there are certain maneuvers you can make if like you totally don't enjoy something. But I think some people read that as like, oh, like you're suggesting I live some mystical, magical life, but that's not necessarily necessary either. I think in achieving
Yeah,
that.
you can enjoy whatever you're doing. I think you find, and there has to be something that you enjoy. And truly speaking, if you enjoy something, you can always find a way to make money out of it. I think where the problem starts is people relate money to success, which is where the problem starts, right? So, yes, you do need money for living a life that you want to, but at the same time, the kind of work you're doing, if that is giving you money but not happiness, then it's of no use, right? So I think you have to make kind of find balance, and it kind of shows in your work as well. If you do not enjoy your work, you feel miserable all the time, you will not be performing to the extreme level that you want to, and it will impact your your work culture, the milieu that you live in, the company that you work for, or everything that you want to gain out of it. So I think it's important to find your niche, your area that you are comfortable in. And I'm sure money is secondary. It comes, as a byproduct of what you do. I think it's easier said than done. I understand that, but I think you have to start enjoying what you're doing. In my opinion, stop complaining. I think I see a lot of people complaining about work all the time. That
I see a lot
work
of that.
sucks. Then don't do it. I mean, you can keep sitting and complaining about your work or the company you work for, but no one is forcing you to do so. So I simply don't understand that concept. But yes,
I agree.
yeah.
Let's move back to the discussion about the declining birth rate. I think there are a lot of causes that we touched on before that you discussed, including mostly the cultural reason of women having birth later in life, and I guess a decline of the value of family in general. And in addition to that, microplastics in our food, reducing fertility rate, increases in miscarriages. So there's all these different factors at play. Out of all the factors, like which factor do you think has contributed the most to such a low birth rate today?
I think it's a combination of all. But if I have to give one, if I have to pick one, and again, in the borderline of not getting too picky on this topic, but what has happened is back in the day, there were certain roles defined for family, right? So, the man is to go and hunt, and woman is to cook. Their roles defined, and so there was a dependency of women on the men in terms of making sure that a family is held together. They raise kids and all. And because of that, the marriage was happening way early in the game, right? So you are in your early 20s and you get married and you form a family, and then you have kids. What has happened now is because of the rise in, and which is a good thing, by the way, feminism, which is allowing women to come back to the workforce, which is greatly improved the economy. Also, it has risen the stature of women in the society because they've been suppressed for a long period of time, in a wrongful manner. But if you truly speak, what has happened because of that is now the dependency of women on men has gone away completely, right? So they believe they can be independent, which is rightfully so. They can earn money. They don't have to depend on a man, and hence their priorities are also coming equally as important as earlier, which was suppressed the level they want to. And then they're also questioning, why should I get married? And even if I get married, why should I have kids now, which will impact my career? Because if you truly see, even in a developed nation like in the US, people returning after, especially women returning to work after children, is losing their career by quite a big extent, right? So, for example, if you're pregnant, your contribution time to the work goes down to the level that you're today. Then you give birth, so you have to take a gap of certain time, and it's not easy to come back to work again with everything that goes with the woman body, right? So, and then you do it 2 or 3 times, if you're having 2 or 3 kids, it easily takes out 4 to 6 years of your career in your peak career time, which is when in the early 20s or late 20s or early 30s. And that compromise, why would women make now? Because they have a career to make as well, and they know that if they do not do that, and they'll be left behind in this corporate race or wherever you want to go in your life. I think it's a big factor which is, contributing to children getting not born at the rate that was before. Now, as you go, now add on top of it that you're growing old. We all know that growing old, raising, not only raising kids, but conceiving kids as well is hard. Add on top of it all of the UPF, ultra processed food we are eating. Add on top of it a microplastic in the environment. So the fertility rate is going down because of that. And as you're growing old, it becomes much more harder for you to conceive. And then the whole aspect of why should women lose their 6 years during the prime time of a career is adding on top of it. Also, another aspect I want to draw out your attention is that earlier, families were more together in terms of the divorce rates were much more lower. And for all the, maybe it's all for the right or wrong reasons, for different reasons for that matter. But now, because of the independence that people can feel about, the divorce is very high. In fact, in a country like US, we were reading the other day, the first marriage divorce is between 40 to 50%, second marriage 67%. All of this is also contributing because people are really thinking about alimony. People are thinking, should I have kids now? Let's figure this out, whether this marriage is going to work or not before having kids. Add all of this equation on top of it, and you'll see that the population declining. Those are my views. Again, nothing against the women liberation. I think it was important, but those are the factors from an overall standpoint, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think feminism is necessarily the enemy of all of this, but I think it's certain things that have inevitably come out of it that have kind of contributed to the problem we see here, right? It might not necessarily mean that woman working is inherently a bad thing, but what ends up happening is that they face a difficult decision to make, as you said, that their career is going so well. They, instead of looking at family as this beautiful thing that has been cherished for all of humanity, it's now seen as a decision that do I want to sacrifice something that's going so well for family? And now families often, I've seen this mindset grow as family as this impediment, having kids is this expense and impediment instead of this loving addition to your life. It's more of that it will impact my life in a negative way, so what's the point of doing it? And I think I've seen a lot of people prioritize career over family, and I'm not saying that they should have to choose one or the other, but it often, in the balance of valuing things over the other, they'll say, okay, we'll push off family to another day. And unfortunately, by the age of 40, it's difficult to conceive for a woman. It's just unfair how genetics kind of work out and how our human bodies are biologically designed. I was talking to the neuroscience researcher a couple episodes ago. The second a woman hits the age of 30, the percentage of their child having Down syndrome significantly increases, and it continues at an exponential rate. And we're just not designed to be fertile and having kids at an older age. And I think that's around the time when not all women, but a lot of women who realize they actually wanted a family to begin with start to realize that now it's kind of too late. And you start to realize that 60 years ahead of you is a long time, or however long you end up living. And it's like kind of half your life ahead of you. And then it's like, do I want to just continue working? And it kind of gets boring and dull if no one wants to be old and alone. It's like the scariest thing. 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, not really having, because your parents start to die. your family starts to die, and you realize like what life without family is actually like. So it's not necessarily that working is inherently the bad thing for women, but it's when they face that decision factor in their mid 20s and 30s. There's also social pressure. Like you don't want to be the one woman who is deciding to be like, I'm actually going to take a step back from career for maybe a period of time or maybe for the next 10 years to value family, because everyone around you is pursuing their masters and getting their degrees and going to work these big jobs, rising the corporate ladder. You feel like you're falling back and behind. So I think there's also social pressure around that if everyone's doing that, then we have to do that as well. And humans are severely susceptible to social pressure. It is such a powerful force. So I think that's a problem. I don't like the mindset that kids are an expense. I think they add so much to life, and that goes for, I think, in both men and women who kind of both men and women are living such independent lives these days that they see any kind of work or pivot from that as this huge thing that should be avoided. Like enjoy your 20s, enjoy your life independently, and I think that starts to become a problem as well. And I think it's also a bit of I think there's definitely been huge suppression of women over years, and we know that, but I think it's a fallacy to believe that going back to a traditional family model means that it's extremely suppressive to the woman, because although it is true that they have been suppressed in many aspects of the world. I mean, you were telling me about this yesterday about how entirety of medicine, a lot of medicine is mainly studying male patients. So because of that, medicines that might only work on male patients, there's inaccurate data in the system, which is definitely true. But that doesn't mean if you choose in your own volition to pursue a traditional family dynamic that you're inherently against feminism and supporting the patriarchy. Because I think we've both seen families in the traditional family dynamic and seem very, very happy and fulfilled and satisfied with that life. Some of my own close family and your actual family back in India, they follow the traditional family dynamic, and I feel like the energy, and there could be many reasons for that, right? But I think family is also a powerful force that contributes to the reason for such high levels of happiness. There's 5 or 6, maybe 3 to 5 people living under one roof all together, which I think is a nuclear family when everyone's together. Or
no, nuclear is the other way around.
Other way around. What's
nuclear
the name?
is just
Extended family.
yeah, it's
together.
like something like that. Yeah.
And they're all under the same roof, and they follow the traditional family dynamic, but there's no like suppression or anything on. Everyone's kind of happy and fulfilled in their roles. So again, that's not true for everyone, but I think to be more open minded that it is not inherently a bad thing. So
Yeah, it's a personal choice, and I think I just finished reading this book, Invisible Woman, and I think it is an interesting read where how women have been suppressed over a period of time until today. In fact, it's a man and dominated society where everything that we do is men first and women next. And medicine was an example. There are many other examples that the book cites for where it's basically any decision you want to make, you keep men in mind. Not that anyone is vicious. It's how they've been designed over a period of time, and women are inherently ignored, and which causes a lot of imbalance in society. But coming back to the point, there are 3 more aspects I want to highlight. One, I think the society we live in has to also contribute to this fact. Yes, women are suppressed for a long period of time. Now that they're back in the economy, they are contributing to the economy, they're in the work culture. What can companies do to make sure that childbearing shouldn't impede their career? Childbearing should not being seen as a taboo for slowing down your career. I see some of the aspects which I personally do not agree. For example, Facebooks of the world, they say will preserve your egg, which is I personally
they
do not
will
like.
do what?
They provide an incentive to female that we can preserve your egg and some.
No.
Yeah, I don't like that. But there could be other things we can do where you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are other things we can do. For example, why can't we not let women not lose their years of experience just because they are bearing child? In fact, the company I work for, HCL Tech, they do that. I mean, when woman goes for childbearing time, at most, I mean, we can provide them 2 to 3 years of sabbatical to start with. When they come back, they don't come back 3 years behind others. They come back at the same time, right? And thanks to our chairperson, Roshan Nader, she is a woman herself, and she has personally driven that agenda. I think a lot of those things in aspect has to come from the society. That's one thing I want to highlight. It's about how to create an ecosystem where women can work and yet do not feel like they'll be left behind. The society has to do about it. Second thing that I want to highlight is that sometimes naivety is also a good thing to have, right? When you are in the early 20s, you are, I should not say immature, but you do not have life experience, right? And because of that, in the old times when you have families, you have families, right? You get married and you're trying to adjust yourself to that. Of course, there are always two sides of the story. There'll be always tension, but they learn to live together and raise a family accordingly. More you get older, right, you become more choosy. You're more exposed to uh, quote unquote goodness of life, and because of that, even if you try to marry later in your life, in the latter part of your years, what happens is you becomes very choosy in who you want to marry, what kind of kids you want to have, all intervention that you need to do, which is also causing a lot of cultural imbalance from a family making standpoint. And third is the personal choice. I completely agree, but at the same time, it's a mindset that has to come from the other party as well, because by and large there are atrocities which has happened to women as well, and we have to acknowledge that, where they're forced into marriage, forced to have kids. Not so prominent today, but there are zones and regions in the world where it's still happening. So we have to make sure that we should not suppress the women, oppress them, or make sure that we take care of them while we grow as a society, creating the milieu that we need to from an overall standpoint.
Interesting. I think for your first point, it definitely makes sense to create a, I guess, a culture or a system within the company to acknowledge what women go through and give them like a separate kind of incentive or assistance going through like those childbearing phases and giving them those longer sabbatical periods as HCL has done. Um,
No, rap is the light. Yeah, rap is the.
that's thing on Spotify started playing on its own. But my only question is, okay, it seems that it's been successful in your company. I just don't see if we just look at a free market capitalism, like what is the incentive of the company to do that?
Yeah. So first of all, I should not say successful in the company. They are trying their part to add to the whole equation. So it's a good point. So merit is a very important aspect. What you're saying, but at the end of the day, the 2 or 3 years when in the childbearing age, what we are trying to say is that woman going out of the work doesn't mean that she's not knowledgeable, she's not talented. What we're not saying is that provide this to any woman who comes across. If she's doing really well in her career, she's sharp, just because she's going out and out of work for a certain period of time, we should not discourage them by saying, oh, you're taking a leave now, there's a promotion waiting for you which is not going to happen, or you're going to lose out on that particular big bonus because of the XYZ client you're going to close in the next 3 months. Sad that you're going on a sabbatical. Those things should not happen, right? And I'm also completely against by saying that just because you're a woman you have to be promoted or you have to be given priority, but you have to nurture them, take care of them. They're hugely talented in a woman workforce, and just because they're in the childbearing time period or just because they have to take a sabbatical to raise a family,
That's interesting.
we should not let them fall behind the other crowd. And that's a very I would say it's a very sad example to set for these future generations to come and see that, just because this woman went out for raising a child or giving birth to a child, she should be denied to grow. So that's the point.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. So the system is still based on meritocracy. It's just that understanding those phases that a woman might go through in certain stages of her life, helping them out, but then still at the end of the day, not giving them an extra position in my decision making of who do I want to hire, for example. But it's more that I still am looking for the merit, right? And if I'm a company, if I see 3 options in front of me, I'm always going to want to take the one that will help me the most, just in logical terms of how a company thinks. But I guess understanding that is a caveat there, but still decide based on that, still deciding based on merit as like the fundamental.
Yeah. So for instance, in our company case, right, let's say the high performing woman or a decent performing lady working in her job, and She is now going to go on sabbatical because she's going to give birth to a kid, and she can take because the initial part of the children is very important. There are other factors as well. For example, breastfeeding kids are so important, which is another topic we can talk on a different day, which is going away from the culture. But assume that
Can you talk more about that?
I think
we're gonna finish your other point.
Yeah.
First.
So where I was going is that let's say you need to have another year or so that you can raise your kid well, and not only that, you go through woman body goes through a transformation giving birth to a child. So let's say you're out of work for a year and a half, right? Just because you took 3-4 months before you're giving birth to the kid, and then you took another year or so to raise the kid well, right? And go through all your body repair as well as recouping yourself to the level that you want. And mind you, when she left or when she went on sabbatical, she was a performing lady. And when she comes back, we don't have to again put her through the evaluation criteria again. We know that she was performing. We should not say, oh, you're 2 years behind now, right? Put her in the same pedestal. She has to again perform, right, to go to the next level. There's undoubtedly she has to do what she has to do in her work, right? Whatever work she is doing. But do not put her through a test process again to make sure that you're qualified. You need to re-qualify yourself to come into the entire workforce, into the level that you need to. Do not let her lose those periods just because she was raising a child. That's the point. At least our company is trying to. There's a long way to go, but it's a great start in my opinion.
Interesting. All right. What was the other point you brought up, that breastfeeding is going down? How's that?
I think breastfeeding is very important. I think there are many studies done, both for the child as well as for the woman, right? I think I am not a medical researcher by any measure, but I have read in the past that but kids who are breastfeeded for at least a year or 9 months to 13 months, they have better cognitive skills, they have a better development, they are more forefront, they are not shy, so overall development. And it is all about the nutrients that is there in the body, because body produce those in the form of milk, and that going to the baby is absolutely critical. Now, I know that there are alternatives available in the market, and when women goes to workforce, it's very hard to manage both. I mean, I know there are breast pumps, so to say, but there are a lot of different alternative milk, if I can say, quote unquote, available. I am a big proponent that we should avoid that and should continue the kid on not formula milk, but on real breastfed milk. And for that, you need to create an environment. It's very easy for me and you to say this, but imagine a woman who has to go back to work. Imagine a woman who cannot afford a breast pump because it's costly, right? And for them, the alternative is go to formula based. And what we're creating is a society which is going to retard it, which is going to be, producing kids which are not to the IQ level that you need to. And needless to mention all the diseases that can happen because your body is not immune. So you'll be having more social implication than by not doing it. So I think that's where the myopic nature of human culture and society has to go away. So by saying that, look, let's give that time to the woman to make sure that in an initial part she can take care of the baby well, right? And there are other symptoms to the woman as well. Their body changes. There are a lot of depression women go through at that point in time. So it's not about it. It's like a switch, right? You've given birth to the baby, 3 weeks, boom, you go back to work. Imagine, giving birth to a baby, and, there are women who go through cesareans as well, right? Which is like, you operate to take the baby out, and they have to recover as well mentally, physically, and having a baby is not an easy job because baby cries, and believe me, I have 2 kids, including you, right? So they cry at night. In the beginning, they are demanding, right? They are hungry in a very short period of time because their stomach is not big. They can only eat that much, and they have to be fed continuously over a period of time. So they cannot sleep well at night as well. Then they have their own mental, pressure or whatever imbalance they have going through. And you need to support women at that point in time. My personal opinion is when a baby is given birth to, the woman should stay with the kid for a longer period of time, whatever that longer period, minimum 3 months, maybe maximum 1 year.
Okay.
And to not, when if a working woman is there, and if she's thinking all the other thing that is going in her mind with the kid and her mental state, as well as all of the changes that has come to her family, on top of, if she has to think about work, it is injustice in my opinion.
Yeah.
So if the company she's working for, rather than they're saying that, well, we can preserve your eggs for later birth, or by saying that, well, if you do not come back in 3 months, max I can give you is 3 months, otherwise you're on your own, is injustice in my opinion. Give them the time so they can create a healthy society for tomorrow, which in turn will pay off, right? That's how your GDP goes up. You have the sharp kids will be doing a lot of better things. You have a woman who is highly spirited. You'll have more enthusiastic population. Even the male counterpart also, they'll also love that kind of a aspect of. It's at the end of the day, family getting the attention they need to. My opinion, these are important aspects we should not forget.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because I'm still trying to understand like what the company's incentive. I mean, it's difficult to institute that as a company, for sure.
For giving the time.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out like how.
It's a mindset, in my opinion, right? In a bigger scheme of things.
Have you seen that play out anywhere else in the world yet?
I think yes, there are a lot of companies they offer it. See, I'll tell you, US has many other aspects as well. For instance, if you do not want to go to work, the state, based on the state you are in and the kind of income group you are in, the state also provide you disability. I don't know why they call it disability. I don't like that word.
Yeah.
It's not, but quote unquote said disability money. They'll pay you checks, right? So at least the money is coming out. But I was going a little further than it's not about the money always, right? Yes, money is important. Don't get me wrong. But if you can get paid sabbatical for some time, and if you need a longer period, companies say, don't worry, you can take a sabbatical, a job is secured. I think those are the minimum thing we can do, knowing that what has happened to women over a period of time. In a capitalist society as well, we can be human, right? And it will pay in a long run. So my opinion, it will pay in a long run. Women has contributed deeply to the economy of the world. And coming back to the workforce after a period of time, the kind of loyalty it will create both for men and women will pay in the long run. So I think, sometimes it will look beyond dollars and cents and see that how humanity comes into play as well. If you truly become, your fiduciary duty is only about, making the next dollar, then I believe you lose the humanity, which in long term, your company will perish, because who makes a company? People makes the company.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's return to the conversation of breastfeeding. So the main problem you mentioned with Formula One is that no drink can match the kind of nutrients that is found through breastfeeding, because it's literally the human body and specific nutrients that are being. There's also, I guess, a communication between the woman and the child that's good for the neurology or the brain of the child. So there's something special about there for the attachment style, etc., for the child's development. And I also think that in the years, you mentioned that at least the minimum of 3 months to a year for the child's development, and just for the difficulty, the overwhelmingness that a woman will go through trying to balance these two major aspects of her life. What are your thoughts on the maybe after that 3 month to 1 year period in terms of the child's development? I think there's, as we've talked about, there's a huge, I think having, first of all, two parents, but also two parents that are actively in your life is huge for the child's development. So what are your thoughts on the interaction between a child and their parents with two working parents after that period?
Yeah, that's, you mentioned nuclear family. That's the fallacy of nuclear family, right? So when you were born, for example, your grandma was here, right? And she stayed for a long period of time. And I'm presuming that your attachment to her is because of that. You're very attached to your grandma because she spent her time here. I think with nuclear family, what is happening, you're pretty much on your own. Your dad, mom, and you, right? Or the child, or the siblings. You're pretty much on your own. And if both of you are working, both the parents are working, the child has to go to a daycare, has to go to a place where they can be taken care of. And that's where the anxiety at times comes in, right? And I think that initial part is very important. When the when you have extended family staying with you, I think that becomes a big support system. Right? There's a difference between a granny and your own grandmom. Right? It's a huge difference because the amount of affection that your grandmom or your parents will give you is unconditional love that will be given to you. They will take care of you. A granny, on the other hand, or a child care center, for the other hand, it's a very mechanical. I mean, I'm not saying they are evil people. They are doing their job, and they do a fine job, by the way. But at the end of the day, the child is on their own. There are two sides of the story here. I also believe at certain point in time, and that's the reason I said 1 year or 1.5 year, whatever that period is, you should be also socially uh, acclimatizing yourself to live with other kids. So what happens if you are only with your parents and your grandparents? You become very shy. You're not open up. I think there is a merit in that part as well. So where I was going is that I think initial period when you're breastfeeding and all, taking care of the child, the affection, the family part is important. So keep the kid with you, and after a point in time, you need to get on to your life, right? And you cannot have the luxury of having your grandparents all the time with you. In our case, we made it happen because we made them travel here and stay with you, and when Nithar was born, with her as well. But after a point in time, it also helps you to go to a decent daycare kind of a facility, because then what you believe is you start interacting with other kids, right? And you start learning social behavior beyond the comfort of your family, which is also equally important for children to overall grow. So I think it's a balance you need to do. You have to protect your kid. You have to give that affection in a time, but at the same time, you have to also expose your children to others as well, so that you're comfortable, and then you can have your overall, neurological development that you need to see in a kid.
Yeah, I find those first couple years of anyone's life so fascinating because so much of your brain wiring that even lasts for life happens in those phases, which is why I think that people who suffer traumatic events in those first couple of years are often the ones that stay with you for the rest of your life. I think one of the prime examples I think of is Peter Attia's last chapter about a certain traumatic experience that happened within the first 5 years of your life will kind of sit in the back of your brain in this strange pathway somewhere where you're not going to be able to access it, but it kind of subtly affects all of your behavioral patterns for the rest of your life. And it goes for traumatic experiences. It also goes for, as you said, social development, right? There's a beauty in how you can learn how to interact with other human beings on a social level, even on those early years. And I think when you learn lessons from just interacting with other kids in the play yard, your brain kind of acquires the skill sets necessary to be able to be comfortable in social situations. And even having your parents' support, unconditional love for years on end, it does something to your psyche, or you kind of have that positive self-image live within you no matter what happens in your life. And some people live with a genuine negative self-image where they will have so much negative self-talk in their brain where they are constantly getting mad at themselves for small things, versus some people who, no matter how many mistakes they make, will always seem to fall back on that positive self-image. So I think those first couple years are so critical, and I think it is sad with one of the things that is kind of terrible with the divorce rate so high in a lot of nations in the West. I think for the U.S. it's between 40 to 50% compared to, I think in India is 1 in 1,000.
Yeah, I think that
1 in 1,000.
It's increasing though in metropolitan
cities. Western culture is increasing everywhere now. I think in Japan is 1 in 100. Families end in divorce. So it's definitely a huge difference between 1/2 versus like 1/100 versus 1/1,000. And then again, there are certain problems with that. I mean, there's a benefit in naivety, but there's also it's a weird balance. You have to kind of figure out, you don't want to end up in the wrong household as well. But I think having a family support system to begin with kind of has this rippling effect where they'll help you kind of get into a good family, versus like forced marriage, which doesn't still happen in the world around today. But it is sad because I think those children that, as you said, 40-50% marriages end in divorce. I mean, half of the kids grow up. Obviously, it matters what age this happens at, but I can imagine so many kids that grow up even between the ages of 1 to 5 without two families, and maybe even no parents, absent parents, or foster home. And I think that's a huge problem in the West. And we look at the culture here, right? We talked about this in the beginning of the podcast, how we felt so safe in Japan, and we felt that people there were so much nicer versus you feel like there's so many more crazy people in the West. I think a lot of people talk about that, just like this Florida person meme of like these crazy people and what unfortunately happened on New Year's Day that you were telling me about in the news in New Orleans.
Yeah.
We keep hearing these crazy stories again and again. We've kind of gotten used to it in the news, and you kind of wonder that how come in some places of the world there's so many more of these people versus in some places in the world you'll never find a single one. Like you would never hear an instance like what happened in New Orleans happen somewhere like Japan. It'd be a rarity. And I think a lot of that comes from those like neurological pathways that develop in your brain in those early years. And I think when you grow up with a lack of family, like it's almost unexplainable kind of how your brain wires in a weird way, and it leads to a greater degree of crazy people. And I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think stable. While disclaimer is, you don't want to be in an abusive marriage. I get that, and in that case, I support that it's better to be out of the marriage than to be in the marriage. But in the first place, if assuming that you are in a marriage where just for smaller things you're getting a divorce, because sometimes it is infidelity, sometimes it is about adjustment, right? I think compromise is a factor which is going away from time, and I believe any marriage is a kind of a middle ground, right? Because you're bringing two people together and they have different mindset and different thought process, right? And over a period of time, those your initial love goes away, and then you have to live with a real person, right? Which is the person that sometimes you may not have seen before. And marriage is all about adjusting to that circumstances and seeing that how you can make most out of it. What I've seen is, by and large now, since people are more independent now, they're saying why to compromise your life, and nothing against them, but at the same time, don't have kids then, and the kids suffers a lot, because when you have a broken house, the worst that can happen is to the kids, right? Assume the kid he doesn't have to make a choice between who he has to live with, right? It's a very difficult choice to make. Let's say for him, both parents are same. Let's say presuming they both love them equally, or him or her equally, and let's say he now sees his dad over the weekend, sometimes once in a month. It's very sad situation for the kid, right? And what a trauma the person may be going through. And then as you're separated out, you'll have new person in life, and you segregate yourself out, and the space increases, but the kid is still yearning for the parent who has gone far off. And there are other situations as well, right? Money comes into play. If you have broken house, money is an issue, then all of those impact comes to kids. And the social, imagine a kid who has to enjoy his initial days in a loving neighborhood and environment, is exposed to this kind of atrocities, then definitely his brain will be wired in a manner that you're explaining that, and negativity comes in, and people think that, or that the children will think that, and always will doubt himself or herself about everything they need to do, and that impacts the personal development of that person, right? So yeah, unfortunately, that's the harsh truth of the new world that we live in.
Yeah, it's weird because you say that with this absent parenthood, if you don't want to put the care into a family, they don't have kids to begin with, but also with the birth rate decline, it's like this weird balance, like where do we can find this middle ground? And I think before we were talking about like the biggest consequence of birth rate decline is people starting to wake up to having this culture of old people working again just to save the economy because of the lack of young people. And I think that the lack of young people in the workforce is something that I think even Japan has gone through in the last 20, 30 years, because I think, as I said, 1 in 3 people are over 65. That's a crazy statistic. And I think in the 90s and 2000s, Japan made some policy changes for their borders where they made it more easy for immigrants to come in on a work visa. So, and I think that's why we saw so many immigrants from Nepal over there. Right in the 90s, 2000s, huge Nepal immigrants workforce came in to take over those missing roles of caregivers and labor force and even like things like construction workers, etc. because there was like a lack of that general economy. And I think right now it's fine because I think with the world dynamics, you can get immigrants come in and kind of take over those roles, but for how long will that last? Because this is starting to happen everywhere, not just in certain nitpick countries that have exceptionally low birth rates. So it's interesting, and I guess I'm not pessimistic because I think that the world kind of finds a way to figure things out, and I think we will wake up to it. I think a lot of people are having conversations about it, but I think it's an interesting point to bring up. That yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your final verdict? You say in the U.S. or no?
Yeah, I think. Whether I'm staying in the US, for sure
for
now.
Long term.
As of now, I have not thought about it in the future how it will fold out. I think at the end of the day, I will stay where the kids are. To put it across in this way, I think family is important to me, as you know. So you'll see where you land up after your wish. When Nitara lands up after her high school, and we'll see. We'll find a middle ground. If you guys are in the US, we'll stay in the US. Yeah. We'll stay close to your family.
That's interesting. It's hard to decide. Definitely, I think there's all these reasons. Even I think we yesterday when we landed, yesterday we landed back. Mom asked me, "Why do you want to stay here?" Do you remember that when she asked me on the Uber car?
Yeah.
I mean, the water supply messed up and the food supply messed up and the culture and the divorce rate. It's almost like all these pessimistic reasons to leave. And I do like the U.S. though. I will say. Besides barring all those factors, if you can control for that, I do like the U.S. a lot. I think it's such an interesting country. It in my eyes, it's the biggest country in the world, not just because of geographical area, but just because of how diverse it really is. If you think about it, that you can go to New York City, and then you can go to Alaska, and you go to Hawaii and California and Austin, Texas, and Florida, and you're in the same country. Denver, Colorado, Ann Arbor, Michigan. They're all so distinct and different wherever you go, and it's all so many different births of cultures and cities that all have their different energy and vibe, all within the same country. I don't think there's a single country in the world that can compare to that. I think that's special in a way. I think that is one of the reasons I like the U.S. a lot. There's a lot to it.
U.S. is an amazing country, and I'm thankful to be here and be a part of this country because my career is all developed here. I gave birth to 2 great kids in this country and raised a family here. Yes, there are aspects of things that we always speak about, but there are so many good things about this country as well, right? In terms of capitalism, in terms of promoting the right behavior in the idea is phenomenal, right? And I'm always hopeful. There are, we are humans, so hence there'll be always fallacies, there'll be always room for improvement, and I'm quite certain that as a society in large evolving, they will find a way to come out of all the fallacies we have. We have to also understand that Japan, for example, we've been talking about this, right? They have been there from time immemorial, right? So unlike US, which is it's a land of immigrants, right? People came from all different lines. I came from India, people came from UK, Poland, Switzerland, all parts of the world, and they have formed what US is. Unlike that, Japan is like, people were literally there from the hunter-gatherers time period, right? And they have,
it's crazy.
It's like amazing to note, right? And then they have, so is India, for instance, right? So it is not like a melting pot like the US is, and that makes US very unique because you have very diverse culture here, right? So you have people from India, people from all over Europe, people from China, Japan, all coming together in this huge melting pot and bringing this cosmic or cosmo energy together to create, which is so beautiful. And there's a reason why US is where US is. You can still ideate something and bring your ideation to a complete fruition of what you want to create. There's no red tapeism. You can create a company, you can create an idea, you can go all out. And I think there are hardly any country I can name who can truly provide you that platform where you can go literally at your level. You can think of opening a company, sure enough, you can go ahead and do that. Now, all of those aspects are very critical and important. I'm very hopeful with the new government. I think what Trump is trying to do with, minimizing the bureaucratic, influence and how to cut down on the number of I'm missing the word.
Bureaucratic agencies.
Agencies, correct. The agency is the word, right? So it's going to limit the number of agencies he has, and then hopefully that will speed up the process of approval focus in the right direction, and we can bring back some of those aspects that we want to see in the US back again. But I 100% agree with you that US is a great country, right? And I'm very thankful and very proud to be part of this country.
Amazing. Yeah. These next 4 years are going to be interesting. I think there are a lot of promises set on the table of all these hopeful things I think people are looking forward to, whether it's bureaucratic reduction or fixing the border or even all these things that RFK has been promising that I guess are more
the food
important
industry,
to us.
pharmaceutical companies,
targeting those problems that exist within the pharmaceutical industry, healthcare industry, and I don't know. There are a lot of these things that make Americans hopeful today about what the future could look like. But I wonder, what do you think the next 4 years will look like?
Well, I think a lot of the promises that Trump has made will be hard to execute on the large scale. Reason being is there's a radical changes, and example is you just cannot go and tell the pharma company not to make some of the drugs that we are talking about, like Ozempic and others, right? You just cannot go and put a spanner to the work. You just cannot go and say that no more immigrants can come to the come to the US, right? So, my opinion, it will be incremental right steps taken, and the 4 areas which I'm very hopeful that Trump administration will focus on. One is around food and the health industry, right, and doing the right things there. Particularly, what is happening with the food industry is scary in terms of what they're putting in the food, which is edible but not food at all. Scary because how often you can ignore it. I mean, we cannot be always going to a farm, bring food from farm and cook at home. Like, I have a traveling job, I have to eat at the airport, and controlling that part is going to be very critical. So what you do with the health and the food is one area I'm looking at. Having a amicable and the right solution immigrants. And I think where people get really wrong with immigrants is, there are legally allowed immigrants, which is a USA land of immigrants, and a great talent has come here, which has formed this company. And if you look at some of the innovation happening in the Bay Area or in DC area, right, in politics, a lot of people have come from outside nation and created this country. So those are good talent coming in, but we have to also fence our border well with all of the illegal immigrants coming in. I know that that's a big controversy. He cannot do it right away because they run the hotels, they run the farms, all those illegal immigrants. But at the same time, there's a fine balance he has to do to make sure that how to control that. That's a second element that we're truly looking for, that how we can bring that to a common conclusion from immigrant standpoint. Third area I'm looking at is hopefully we'll do something about the international relationship and some of the chaos that is happening in the world. Particularly the war with Ukraine has gone too long, right? And some of the aspects of what is happening in the Middle East. And I believe by and large, how we can impede some of our dollars going there so that we can develop our nation well. At the same time, how we can influence some of the large world, because we have that power to bring end to this misery, because the world is connected now, and that impacts our economy, that impacts inflation and everything else. And fourth is not much talked about, but with Elon Musk and everyone coming into play, I'm hoping that there is some good deregulation on AI coming into play, right? So, I think AI in the wrong hands could be a disaster, and with all the big ideas with the hand of corporation, and threat of this getting out of the country, and with in the hands of the wrong people will be a big deterrent factor, including quantum computing, which is coming up to rise. So I'm hoping that we can put some guardrails around it so that AI can work for us, not against us. So those are the 4 areas I'm looking at. Obviously, everything else is a bedrock, like cutting down the agencies that we spoke about, or making sure that you have the right people in the right position. But I think those are the areas if we can do well. I think world will be a better place to live in, and hopefully US can, as US is already leading, can lead from the front in all of those aspects.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are great 4 points, and hopefully we can see some progress at least in the next 4 years. And everyone's hopeful that I didn't hear much about the fourth one, at least in the political standpoint. I mean, we talked a lot about AI regulation, but has any of the leaders like openly spoke about implementing this in the next 4-year time frame or?
Well, I think the what's the name of the Claude CEO? I'm forgetting his name.
Claude CEO, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he has spoken about it. I think California is one state which is coming out, and rightfully so, because all the AI innovation is happening in that state. So they're coming out with some AI regulation, which is to make sure that all these big AI models that we're creating and the language models that we're creating, what kind of guardrails they have to put in to make sure that hallucination can be controlled. Or
what about hallucination?
Hallucination is when AI model thinks that it's right and provides the information claiming that it is right when it's not right. That's hallucination.
They'll always give you an answer.
Sure, this is the answer. And then you say, sorry, you're wrong, so I apologize, and again it will go. So hallucination is when it will misguide you, right? Which is very dangerous, right? And in let's say if AI is getting used in medicine research or for example for treating patient, hypothetically speaking, and if it start hallucinating, it can treat people differently and can result in some disasters, right? So I think what do you do with how do you make sure AI doesn't hallucinate? How do you make sure that you put the right guardrails for protecting information? What do you need to make sure that AI doesn't fall in the wrong hands? All of those aspects are yet to be spoken about. There are companies sprouting from all directions. Native AI companies such as Perplexity, Claude, for example, Google, Apple, everyone is creating. Then there are surrounding ecosystem companies creating, and all of those data that they are scoring and putting together, and those data, if they start hallucinating, start giving the wrong information, start providing the information to the wrong people, all of those can lead to disaster, right? So all of those aspects are important, in my opinion, to talk about, to put some right guardrails about.
Yeah, so it's important that you touch on what are the specific regulations necessary, making sure it doesn't get in the wrong hands. Because I think this balance between regulation will be interesting because we don't want to regulate it too much, and I think that can also slow us down compared to, I think, other countries, although they might not be a successful model of general governance, but let's think of China, for example. When they really want a certain area or field of research to succeed, the government themselves will pour money into it. It's not really free market capitalism per se, right? Versus, I think one of the benefits of America is that it relies on free market capitalism. So it's kind of, as you said, anyone can start a company, anyone can do what they want, and there's less regulation and more kind of balance of funding that can allow the companies that provide the most value to rise, right? At the same time, some regulation is necessary. We don't, as you mentioned about all the dangers, and you've talked about in multiple videos and in previous podcasts we've done, and the lessons you've learned from Nexus.
Nexus, yeah.
Lexus.
You will.
Yeah. So I'm curious about what do you think that balance should look like in terms of how much regulation is necessary, how much should we just let free market capitalism be free market capitalism?
I think I'll quote from what Yuval Noah Harari said in his book Nexus, right? And I think it's the last chapter. He speaks about what the company, and I'll verbatim tell you, I'll paraphrase it to the point I can, right? So I think number one, I think whosoever is creating AI, be it government or corporations or anyone, AI should work for the humanity, not against the humanity. I think we have to keep that in mind. It should not erase the humanity, right? So, we have to be conscious and make sure that we create AI accordingly. But more importantly, I think AI should be decentralized according to him. We all know that whosoever has the data has the most power, right? And data, curated data with AI on top of it will be like superpower, right? And right now it is with few companies and corporations, right? So I think we have to make sure that it's a decentralized because they can then influence the whole behavior of the entire ecosystem accordingly with the other data, right? And can monopolize the whole environment accordingly. So how do you make sure that, I'm not saying you should innovate and all, but how do you decentralize that is very important. Do not have a direct answer, but it's very important part. The third, what AI is doing is monitoring, right? So corporations are monitoring you for selling you more, or at least selling your data to someone else to sell you more, or appreciating or understanding your behavior to make sure that they can influence you in whatever direction they need to. And I think government may be monitoring for different purposes, for terrorism, for knowing that what kind of elements you're doing, which is exposing your data out, right? And I think a maturity is required there, which predominantly means that, it's a maker checker thing, right? So if you're monitoring me, I should be able to monitor you. And being transparent on those factors are going to be very critical. Otherwise, there is social unrest, right? More and more, if this becomes an area to influence anything, health, money, wealth, otherwise, it will become a divided society, and which will become truly social unrest kind of situation. Imagine that, if AI can tell you that, well, you should do XYZ to expand your life, and only if you pay money, you can, because you have centralized unit, you can give access to people who have money, and then the poor population will be all left behind. So things of those nature are something to think about. And finally, whosoever is creating AI, we have to all know that, look, there is a room for improvement. Do not give control to AI yet. Do not give everything in AI's hand to decide. In a hypothetical situation, let's say a country says that I'll nuke someone based upon what AI tells me, is a very bad decision, right? So we do not know what AI can do, and just assuming that AI is the best judgment for me and I will let AI decide whether I should nuke someone or not is a very bad decision, right? Because then if you give the control to it, automate it based upon, let's say it hallucinate, it created some fear-mongering situation within itself, and it thinks that someone is nuking a nuke on behalf of you just because you've given power to the AI. It will be a disaster. It's world coming to an end. So I think human beings are very sharp. They have created something beyond, what you can imagine back in 1900 or 1800. They have created this, but it should not be a monster, right, for you, which can bring down the society that we have created over a period of centuries and down to ashes in a few minutes, right? So we are capable of doing that. I think those are the elements we have to be very careful about as AI, quantum computing, Gen AI, all of those is coming into play.
The point you bring up about what should AI really decide for us, because I think we will definitely reach a point in society where we will say that we will outsource decision making to AI, because AI is like this 120 IQ human but it just happens to know everything in the world. So it's kind of really powerful force, and it may develop the ability to logic extremely reasonably. It may develop extreme intelligence that makes humans seem almost like nothing compared to what it's capable of. And I think there is something special about human decision making that I wonder if it is able to replicate in AI. And the reason I bring this up is because I don't think humans rely on emotion a lot to make decisions. I think it's more than we realize. We think that we make decisions out of logic, but I think that for 99% of the decisions we make, there's kind of this gut instinct, even if we don't really feel it, that subtly in the background influences our decision making, and logic kind of proceeds that, follows that, and says, oh yeah, that's what I meant for it to happen. And the reason I bring this up, in this book I'm reading right now, there was this example of this person who had this certain condition. I believe he damaged a part of the brain that is responsible for emotion regulation. I think it's the temporal lobe. I can't remember the exact.
What's the name of the book?
It's called The Tale of Doing, and it's literally about brain injuries.
Do you like it?
I like it a lot. I'm still reading it, almost through it, but really eye-opening, for sure. But yeah, this person, he damaged, I think, the temporal lobe or some part of his brain that's responsible for emotional regulation, and after he damaged that part of his brain, he couldn't make any decisions ever. Which is weird because his prefrontal cortex and all the parts of his brain that can work through logical decisions, none of it's damaged. Only the emotions are damaged. And he couldn't make simple decisions like, where should I eat today? What should I eat for? What restaurant should I go to today? Yeah, there's an example in the story where he was sitting with his wife in the car, and he literally could not decide what restaurant they should go to. And he started weighing out all the things he can. Started weighing out all the logic. Started making a list. All right, what's the timings of the restaurant? Every single option on their menu. the ambiance of the restaurant, how much wait staff is there. He'll go to each restaurant and see what the current wait time is. He will look at all these intricate details and then make a map, and still with all the data and all that logic, and even if one makes logical sense, can't decide. He'll stare at two ties in the morning for 3 hours straight, and we won't be able to decide which tie should I wear today. Because I think for 99% of the decisions we make in our day-to-day life come from emotion and not logic. And even if we can logically reason through something and something makes sense, a lot of times he'd be able to logically reason through things when people had conversations with him, like scientists. And he'd be able to logically reason through things, but at the end of the day, he couldn't make a single decision about anything in his life, and it kind of drove him insane. Because all the decisions we make are primarily emotion-based. I think that's the one thing that will be weird ingraining into AI because we don't really understand it yet. So it's an interesting one. And I mean, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what are your thoughts on this balance between logic and emotion?
I agree. I think we may say that we are very logical thinkers, but emotions we subconsciously into our decision, right? Anything that we do in your life, I think it plays a role into it, and how it clouds your mind is something you are not also aware of, right? You may think you're very, very logical, predominantly, emotion plays a big role into it. Now, I agree with you that AI cannot replace human brain completely, but most of the work that we spend hours and hours in doing, that will go away for sure.
Mundane tasks.
Like mundane tasks, right? For example, reading scores a book like this and summarizing it, or going through our entire DNA helix structure and figuring out which gene is traveling you or not, right? So synthesizing data and connecting dots between data, just like how we form sentences, language models and all, will be easier to be done, which was earlier difficult, right? Earlier, it was like a scores of data you have, and you form very logical queries to bring it. Now it can form logic based upon various different connections. Where it will fall behind is the areas like emotion. So you'll still need a human to direct it, to get what you need to. But when you have complicated tasks, but there are sequence of job to be done, I don't think you'll need humans to do it anymore in the coming days. Yeah.
We'll see what it looks like. Kind of along the same lines, a little bit off topic. Have you heard of the experiments by Benjamin Lebet?
No,
I think that's his name. I hope Lebel or Lebet, something like that. But it's basically this experiment that touches on free will and whether free will exists or not. And I think when I described the study, you might have heard something
it's
like
this. It's like a thought experiment, or
it's a scientific study actually. So it was done, I think, in 1980 in San Francisco. Okay. And basically what I hope I don't mess up his name. Let me just search it up. I think it was Lebel. All right, it was Lebet, Benjamin Lebet.
Okay.
Experiment. So we had patients sit in front of a timer. The timer would tick 1, 2, 3 for a certain period of time, and the patients had a very simple task. At some random moment when the timer's going off, lift one of your fingers and lift it down, and record at what time stamp you do it, which is very easy, right? You have literally to the hour, minute, second, millisecond dot. It's right there. So just remember it, right? So, okay, lift my finger at 5:32:10. That's what I did. I consciously chose to do that. 5 minutes, 10 seconds, 32 milliseconds. I chose to lift my finger. All right. And he would record. He has a video of them as well, so you could see at what moment they raised their finger, at what moment they reported they raised their finger. And you notice that there was a kind of a delay where the action of them actually lifting the finger and the moment they said they consciously lifted the finger, there was a couple, like 10 milliseconds difference. Meaning that they consciously felt that they lifted their finger after the fact that it already happened.
Because the time takes for the neuron to send message?
Well, it's actually kind of happening the other way around, because they said that, oh, wait, I just lifted my finger, but the finger lifted 10 seconds ago. So how can you say, it's like me saying that, let's say I jumped up and down right now, and then 10 seconds later saying, I just jumped up and down. But no, I saw you do it 10 seconds ago, but at a much smaller scale of 10 milliseconds instead. Mm-hmm. And the reason it's weird is because you'd expect me to say, okay, I'm jumping right now, and then I jump, right? That delay kind of makes sense. But the delay is in the opposite direction, where your conscious awareness of the action that just happened proceeded the action already happening. So the argument for that was that there's something in your unconscious mind that made the decision to lift the finger just now, and your logical mind sees that happen and then justifies it and saying that, oh, I meant for that to happen. I'm the one who did it. And the kind of pride or ego in the conscious mind will convince you and kind of create a delusion saying that, no, you actually have free will. Like, you actually just decided to raise that finger. So it's really a question of, like, if I lift my hand right now, is it because I just decided to, or did my hand rise on its own and then my brain told myself, oh yeah, that's what I meant to do? It's a big question. So it was an interesting thought.
Very interesting. Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, very interesting. I think, human mind is such a complicated organ that I think it's very hard to decipher everything that is happening there. Every time we know everything, there's so many things still pending for us to discover and to know. And they say there are billions of trillions of neurons there. And we have only, in my opinion, just gotten a few percentage of appreciation of what's happening there. I think it's a fascinating organ to study, no doubt about it, but I don't think we have come anywhere close to appreciate and understand what's going on in our brain completely.
That's weird. That's for sure. Yeah. Close out. What will 2025 look for you? It's just first couple of days here.
So look for me in the sense what I want to do in 2025, what I want to achieve.
What do you envision for this year?
Well, it's a great start of the year. So we traveled, we came back from Japan, some great memories and great learnings as well. This year, let's see, I think obviously my focus this year is health, like always, making sure that, both mentally and physically, right? So when my physical health I have been focusing on for long, I think I want to continue the journey further. I want to get my stats right. So that's one. And mental well-being is very important. So I'm going to work on meditation, which I have lacked. Though I have planned last year, I have not done much. So stretching, mental balances I'm going to focus on. I read this book known as Lifespan, which I'm planning to follow to the hilt. Some of the advice is given by David A. Sinclair, is the author. Things like sleeping well, things like eating less, things like going vegetarian to the extent I can, things like exercising, and also some medical supplement which I need to do some research before I say yes to it. So that's about health and wellness. I have a big target for my YouTube channel, so making sure that I remain consistent. So this year the focus is not on how many followers I'll have or how many hours of views I get or how many total views I get. The focus is more about consistency. So, can I be consistent in creating quality content? So I have a goal in terms of creating videos, quality content over a period of time. So I'm going to focus on that. And the travel website that we have, already launched it, but making sure that, the content, everything is coming together. So those are the hobbies I want to pursue. I want to write a book as well. So not decided fiction or non-fiction, but continue the journey of writing, love writing. So I want to do that. Learn a language maybe, challenge my brain to learn a new language, visit some places with that new language and see that whether I can put that in practice and see you kids grow. I'm very excited about what you'll do this summer. Hopefully you'll do the internship. We'll see how it comes together and what Nitara does with her 9th grade and as she moves to 10th grade. So yeah, seeing you guys grow and doing well is something in the plan I have as well in 2025.
Amazing. Well, definitely looking forward to it, and we'll reconvene on another day. And good luck with everything for this year.
Yeah, before you close, what's your plan as well?
My plan? The year is long, so I guess right now I'm kind of looking at the 3 months ahead primarily, and what I want to see in these next 3 months. So the next 2 months, I want to get back to working hard to achieve a lot of things. So really dedicating as many hours in the day toward like the things that are most important to me. So really in the next 2 months, I envision bulking, going back to bulking. I'm kind of taking a break since Thanksgiving, really, because by Thanksgiving, I kind of hit close to my goal of getting to 140 pounds in that 3-month time frame. Then after Thanksgiving, I kind of got sick for that first week, and then there's like a week or two left. And I tried, but I was did not making much progress, and then December break came around. So see where I'm at weight-wise, then try to get to like 145 close to by that end of this 2-month period, and hopefully even more than that, for sure. Then beyond that, I mean, that'll take a lot of my time, lifting, eating. Beyond that, just doing well academically, preparing for the internship that I'll hopefully do next summer. And then, I mean, health and wellness is always going to be part of the mix there. So I continue to do daily practices and weekly practices, but also prioritizing social life as well. Just continue to cultivate great relationships and people in Michigan, and using that to continue to fuel the podcast. And I think last year I kind of achieved the goal of never missing a week of the podcast, so I'm glad I was able to maintain that. I think the quality is greatly improved. I built a team now, so I'm definitely liking where it's at right now, but it does bother me that the watch time is pretty low. So I think now it's shifting to more of a focus on what are things I can do to optimize watch time and increase. I think followership is increasing through the shorts. Then again, how well is that funnel working for the actual long form content? What can I do to improve the long form content to increase the watch time on that? So I'm hoping by the end of the year I can get to 1,000 subscribers, and then actually beyond just the subscribers, it'd be more important to me to have like a 10 to 20 hour watch time per podcast average. That'd be pretty happy, because sometimes we'll get 5 to 10 hours, and then sometimes we'll get none. So I want to reduce the variability. I care about that more than the subscribers, really. I really want an average of 10 to 20 hours of watch time per podcast episode, and I'm hoping the longer form clips will help funnel that into it, but we'll see. That is the primary goal. So definitely over the next 2 months, I'll be focusing on that and seeing what I can achieve in that period. In March, haven't decided what I want to specifically do yet, but hopefully do something maybe hiking related the first week in March. And then, I mean, those are the primary goals that will continue to fuel. I mean, I think I change a lot as a person as the months go on, so I guess we'll see what I deem more important over different periods of time, and then kind of just adjusting as the year goes on. But yeah, that's the plan for now.
Yeah, good luck. I'm sure it'll be an exciting journey, and I would love to hear more from you how you proceeded with those.
Amazing. Let's sign the poster. Let me get the marker.
All right.
Your episode number is number 77.
77?
I think.
Any particular location you want
You
to
choose.
write?
You can choose wherever you want.
All right, I'll write here.
All right.
77 you said?
77. Perfect. Amazing.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right. Peace.
Take care. Bye.
If you enjoyed that episode, then I guarantee that you'll enjoy this episode right here. Make sure you click here to watch that episode, and the best way to support us is to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell as well. It is the best way to support us, and it'll help us to keep growing, get better guests, better production, and make this the best podcast in the world.